If you want to learn FL Studio from the very beginning, then this is the perfect course to get you started, because by the end of this, you'll know everything you need to make music in FL Studio and even finish your first song. And lastly, if you like my teaching style, feel free to check out my paid 7-day course, link in the description. So let's start with the interface. I know when I tried to learn this, it felt like learning a spaceship or something, but it's actually way simpler than it looks. So these 5 buttons at the top will get you pretty much everywhere you need. So first we got the playlist, which is where you'll build and arrange your whole track by placing out samples and patterns. And then we got the piano roll, and here's where you'll write music, like creating chords, bass lines, melodies, by just placing out notes, like this. And the channel rack is where every instrument, sample, or synth will be. If something makes a sound, you can find it here. And then there's the mixer, which is where you can add effects to the sounds you added to the channel rack. Effects such as EQ, reverb, delay, etc. to help improve or shape those sounds. Lastly, we have the browser. This is basically your sound library. You'll find drum kicks, hi-hat loops, any sound really, that you can then just drag and drop into your playlist like this. And also, by the way, a sample is just a recorded sound file, so like a WAV or MP3 file. So you'll probably spend like 99% of your time in these 5 main windows. And before we start making music, you may want to import some samples and plugins. And for that, you can go into Options, then File Settings, and here you have all the folders which FL Studio will be searching for samples. So as you can see here, it says FL Studio All Packs and Samples. This folder is right here as well. So all you really need to do is add your samples into these folders, or you just add another folder where your samples are. Another way you can do this is by just right-clicking a folder here and then click Open. Here you can add your samples or sample packs. So for example, if we just copy and paste this in here, you'll see that it hasn't appeared yet until we click refresh up here and then it appears. So that's how you add samples. And these 2 websites on the screen right now have a ton of free sample packs if you want something to get started with. And for plugins, you can just click on Manage Plugins here. And this is all the folders where FL Studio will be searching for plugins. So you can just install them into these search paths, or you can add the folder where you install them by clicking here. Then just add it. And then you just click on Find Install Plugins here, and it should appear in this list. And again, if you're just getting started, I think these free plugins are the best free plugins right now. So I recommend you give them a shot. So let's start by creating a chord progression. You can just right-click the sampler here, then click Insert. I recommend you start with the piano. That's typically the easiest way to get started with the chord progression. And I'm going to use Contact 7, but you can use Splice Instrument or FL Keys that's within FL Studio. And then you can just right-click your instrument here and click Piano Roll. And now you can hear this instrument if you place out notes by left-clicking like this, and then press space to play it. And as you can see in the top left corner, there is a bunch of tools you can click on, but all you're really gonna use like 99% of the time is the paint tool, which you get by pressing B, and then you can remove and add notes like this. And if you press C, you get the cut tool. It lets you cut things, and you're gonna do this a lot. And the last one is the select tool, which you get by pressing E. So we got B for the paint tool, remove and add, and C for cut, and E to select multiple, and then press delete to delete it. And before we start making a chord progression, I recommend we add some scale highlighting, which you can do by clicking up here, and then click on View, and then on Scale Highlighting here, and then you can pick Major if you want a more happy song, and Minor if you want a more darker or sad song. I'm gonna pick minor, and then you can go up there again and pick what kind of minor scale you want. I'm gonna pick A sharp, but it doesn't really matter what you pick here, to be honest. And as you can see on the piano roll here, we can see the name of the notes. Then I suggest you go up here again, click on View, and then Key Labels, and then All Notes. This will make sure you'll see all the notes instead of just the root notes. So let's place a note here and drag it out. Zoom in a little bit by right-clicking up here and dragging the mouse a bit. So to make a chord, you just need to move 2 notes up in the scale from the root note of the chord. So the first note is always the root note. So if we move 2 notes from the scale, we end up in C sharp. And if we move 2 notes again in the scale, we end up on F. Now we have our first chord. And this is an A sharp minor chord. And if you want to make a major chord, the middle note is just 1 step above. So if we make this into a chord again, the middle note is different. Now the D note is not in the A sharp minor scale, so we can't really use this chord, but it's just to show you the difference between a major and minor chord. And there you just follow this formula to create a chord progression. So let's pick a note somewhere like F sharp, then move up 2 notes, 2 notes. That sounded good. Let's add it again, maybe C. That did not sound good, so we can maybe try C sharp. Sounded good. And maybe try G sharp next. And we got a chord progression, guys. It's that simple. I think we can try something different, maybe F. That works too, so I'm gonna keep that chord, and to preview everything kinda quick, you can press Y and then just... So the next thing I like to do is add another octave of the root note of the chord. So if you press E for the select tool and then hold Shift, you can select multiple notes. And then we can press B to get the paint tool again, and then hold Shift and left click on the note. And we'll get a copy. And then we press Control down to move it down an octave. And also moving something in octave just means you move it 12 notes. So as you can see here, A sharp, if we move it 12 notes up, it's still an A sharp, but higher. So it's just gonna be a higher or lower pitch of the same note. And that's because there are only 12 notes that you can use in music. And then it repeats over and over again. And let's zoom out a little bit by right-clicking here and dragging it down. And then we can right-click here to zoom in a little bit as well. So what we have here is the chords in its most basic form called triads. And we could spice this up by doing what's called inversions and chord voicing changes, which basically just means you move the notes inside the chords octaves up and down. So if I move the F sharp up an octave, and let's say this one down an octave and this one up an octave, and these chords are still called the same chords, even if the notes are arranged in a different order. So let's hear it with a different chord voicing. And as you can see, it sort of sounds the same, but also different in a way. And typically, songwriters like to bring the chords closer together. So instead of it being like this becomes such a big pitch change. So people like to do chord inversions and chord voicing changes to bring them closer together. And if you want to spice these chords up even more, you can honestly just add notes wherever you want and see how it sounds. So let's do exactly that. Maybe try this, 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 boom. I really like this chord. This one sounded great. Let's remove these. I didn't like these ones. Maybe try this one. I think we have a good chord progression, guys. Honestly, it's just about experimentation. Not really any hard rules for making music as long as it sounds good. And the next thing that's good to know about is tempo, which is how fast the song is being played. And you can change that by adjusting this number right here. And we can also add the metronome to hear how fast the song is going. It's kind of fast. I think I'm gonna stick with 120 BPM, and then we can just turn this metronome off. And as you can see, the metronome is hitting on every beat. So this is considered a beat, what I'm highlighting. And this is another beat. And the 4 beats here are representing what's called a bar. So there are 4 beats in every bar. And typically a chord progression and melody is across 4 bars. And another thing that I think is really useful to know about is velocity, which you can drag up here at the bottom. And this determines how hard the notes are being played. So if the velocity is high, it will sound much harder. And if it's lower, it's more soft. So this is a way to make realistic instruments such as strings, pianos, and guitars sound more realistic by just adjusting how hard every note is being played. So one thing you can do to improve this even further is just press up here, then go to Tools, and then go to Randomize. And here, you can randomize how hard every note in the whole chord progression will be pressed. So this will make it sound really realistic. So let's accept this, and now it sounds like this. Another tool that I think can be really useful is also the arpeggiator. So if we select all the notes you want to be affected, then click on Tools, and then go to Arpeggiate, we can create some really cool sort of melodies, such as maybe slower the time, and then increase the gate. And you get some cool melodies. So this is a super simple way to just get started with something. Another tool that I think is really cool is their chord generator. So here you can actually just generate a whole chord progression by just pressing generate. Or you can find a bunch of presets here that sounds pretty damn good, to be honest. But maybe it's not the best way to learn how to make music, but I figured I'd let you know anyway. And the last thing we can do is change the rhythm a little bit. Maybe press E to select multiple, hold Shift to select both chords. Then press B again, drag this in, then select Tool again, and then we just drag this out. And one thing you can do as well, if you don't like it getting stuck to the grid, is hold Alt, and it will be more fine-tuned to exactly where you want to place it. So that's how we make chord progressions. If this has been helpful so far, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. So let's now create a melody, and you can just press right click and add whatever synth you want as a lead. I'm gonna pick Serum 2, but you can pick any synth or instrument you want. And in every synth plugin or instrument or effect plugin, you'll have what's called presets, which is basically just pre-made settings on that plugin. So here I have a bunch of different synth sounds I've already created and saved. And you can preview the sound of any preset by clicking on the button up here, which basically means your keyboard becomes the piano down here. So I can just press the random buttons like Q, W, E, R, T. So we can just turn that off because we don't need it, and exit this. And then we can just right click Serum 2 and go into the piano roll. And as you can see here, I can see the chord progression that we created earlier. And if you don't see this, I recommend you go up here and click on View and then Ghost Channels. This will allow you to see the chord progression, or press Alt V. And because we can see this, it makes it even easier to create a melody. Because if we stay within the chord notes when we're creating the melody, it's 99% of the time gonna sound good. It's not gonna sound bad, you know? So what we can do is maybe start with a rhythm first. Maybe something like that. And to spice this melody up a bit, we can maybe change the pitch of the notes. Maybe try something like this, and I'll select all and make them a bit shorter as well. Do the same here. And there we got a super simple melody. You don't really need to overcomplicate it, and I recommend you listen to the music you're inspired by. Try to hear what kind of rhythm they are using, and then just make a similar rhythm yourself and change the pitches. Because I think we're gonna make an Afro house song, they typically have the same pitch on the melody. So I'm just gonna move this up here, but you understand the gist of making a melody now. And by the way, if you struggle to remember every shortcut I mentioned, feel free to screenshot this. It's my most used shortcuts. So all we're missing now is some bass, some drums, and maybe some vocal chops. So let's exit this and add another Serum synth. And I'm gonna use this preset right here. And the bass line typically consists of the root notes of the chords. So if we go into the chords here, we can just press E to select multiple, Control C to copy, and then go back into the piano roll of the bass here, and then Control V to paste it. And now we have the bass. And obviously you can go off the root notes as well if you want to spice it up, but typically the bass sits around the root note of the chords. And if you want to listen only to the bass, you can go into the channel rack and press Control left click, and you will mute everything else except the bass. So let's start organizing a little bit. And we can start doing that by maybe right-clicking this and renaming them. So this is the bass. Let's rename this to lead. And this is the piano chords. And if we place this out here, you can see they're all in the same pattern. So if we right-click up here and click split by channel, each instrument gets its own pattern. So we got bass, the lead, and the piano chords. And the same thing happened here. So now we can just adjust them individually. Maybe cut out the lead and the bass here. We can do that super easily. Let's add some drums to this. And I'm going to use a third-party app for this called Splice. But you can use your browser here and add your samples as you wish. So let's try to find a kick first. We can just search kick in my own folder. Maybe try this one. And then we can zoom it a little bit. Then cut this out. And then I want to align this kick with half of the beat. So this is one beat, right? And this is half the beat. And you're going to understand why in a minute, don't worry. We can just fade it by clicking here on the sample, and then you can hold Alt if you want a smooth fade. So if you don't hold Alt, it becomes like this. And then you can just press on the sample and then place it out like this. Maybe reduce this in volume a little bit, select them all, and down here, you can just drag down to turn down the volume, or you can just double click the sample and turn down the volume here. So let's add some drum loops and some perks maybe. So here are a few drum loops and 2 perk hits that I just dragged in from Splice. If we mute these other ones by pressing T, the mute tool, you can see how it's not aligned with the beat. It's off beat. And that's because the BPM of this loop is 124, as you can see on the sample there. And we're on 120 BPMs. So the way to fix that is by just clicking in the top left corner and then fit to tempo. And then you just click here and it aligns. That's all you need to do. And then we can do the same with this other loop. Then go into fit tempo and align it. Just cut out the remainder here. And now they both fit. A little bit too loud maybe. Let's turn them down. And by the way, this is a shaker. It sounds like this. And here's a perk stack. Then we get 2 perk hits here. It sounds like this. I think we should align these perk hits with the melody here. So if we just turn this down by holding Shift plus down key and then move this down, Shift and down key, then we can just align these like this maybe. Then we can copy this over as well by pressing Ctrl B for duplication. So if you want to duplicate something, you can just take whatever you want, Ctrl B, and you get a bunch of duplications. So let's move the lead up again, and then we can move this up. And let's turn these shaker hits down a bit in volume. I sort of think this one is way too loud, so let's turn it down. Right now, this sounds kind of flat and boring. So to fix this, we need to add something called Sidechain. And this is something that's done in pretty much every electronic song that you're meant to dance to, I guess, to just give it some movement. So to do this, you can go into the channel rack and then we can just hold left click and we'll be able to select all of these samples and instruments. And then you can press Ctrl L and it will assign all of these into the mixer channel automatically. And if you want to do this manually, you can obviously just assign it here, but just dragging your mouse around, but this is a faster way to do it. So let's start with the bass. As you can hear, it's very stiff. And if you want to, I guess, loop this, you can right click up here. So I recommend to use Flux Mini 2 as a sidechain if you don't have a paid plugin. And these lines here shapes the volume that goes through this mixer channel. So we want this bass to just duck in volume when the kick hit. So as you can see up here at the kick, it's half a beat. So if we move the sync to 1/4 of a beat, we just drag this up here like this, it ducks half the beat. Maybe something like this can work. So if we add the kick to this, you'll hear how they work in sync. And if I turn this off, it gets super boring, stale. So what we can do now is just save this as a preset and add it to our other tracks. Bass sidechain 2, I guess. Then we can go into the kick, and typically you want to sidechain the bass and sub bass the most, and then the other instruments a little bit less. So we can probably pull this up and do something like this. And the piano doesn't have much energy right now, so I think we can probably pull up the velocity like this. Just give it some more energy. Pull this up a little bit. Something like this. Maybe even less. If you hold Control, you can select multiple of these. And then we can pull it down. Maybe even more. Now it starts sounding pretty good, right? So now that we got some bounce and some kind of party vibe going on, you know, we can start adding vocal chop to this to just spice it up even further. So I found this vocal sample called Indian Vocal Bollywood that I found on Splice. And as you can see, it's 120 BPM, which is the right BPM. And then in the end, it says G minor. If it only said a G, it means it's G major. So that's how you separate them too. So since we know that's G minor, we can see on the piano roll, it's this note here. So we need to move it 1, 2, 3 notes up to get it to A sharp minor. Because if we listen to it now, it's gonna sound like this. It's not in key. Double click on the sample and then you have the pitch range here. And every number here is just one note change. So let's change it to 3 and then you just move it up like this. And now it's out of rhythm instead. So in order to fix this, you go into mode and then click on stretch. This will make sure even if we move the pitch, no matter how much, it's not gonna move the sample out of rhythm. So if I just quickly chop this up a little bit, we can make it sound kind of cool. Maybe something like this. Probably something like this, right? So we can probably align this a little bit by holding shift and dragging these bing bong. And in this window, you also have panning here, which just adjusts how much to the left or right the sample will be. And then you can normalize it here if you want it to be louder in volume in case it's really low volume. And then you can reverse the sample here as well. It doesn't work right now though. And here you can also change when the sample is gonna start. And then you can change how far the sample is here. And here you can add some fading to the start of the sample and fading to the outro of the sample, which can be useful as well. And if we just want to quickly reset this, you just right click and click reset. And we can just click on track up here and it will add it to a mixer channel. So we can start by adding some reverb to just give it some space, maybe a lot of reverb, and cut the low end here. And the mix decides how much reverb, the decay decides how long is the reverb tail gonna last for. And here we can cut the frequency of the high end and low end of the reverb. And every reverb has similar buttons, so you'll find this on FL Studio's reverb as well. And I'm gonna explain mixing more in detail later, so don't worry if this is a bit confusing. And I think we can pitch this up an octave as well. So you can add pitch shifter here, then go into voice, and just pull this up an octave. And before. So if you want to beef this up even more, we can maybe add some distortion, through the fastest maybe. Turn down the mix a bit. And lastly, you know what we're gonna add? Some sidechain. Just make it bounce a little bit with the track. And we don't want to sidechain this as much as the other things. The last thing we can do is add some wideness to this. And now I'm adding a lot of things, but I think this gives you an idea of what you can do. So Ozone Imager 2, this is a free plugin you can download if you want. As you can see, the sample itself doesn't have stereo, but the reverb adds some stereo. But we can just add even more by pulling this up. So now it sounds like this. Turning down the volume a bit. And if you want to make this sound even better, we can do something called layering, which means we stack sounds upon the sounds we already have to make it sound more full and professional. So if we take this lead, for example, we can right click and copy it, and then we can just go into this other synth and add a different sound to stack with it. So if we just try something random here, I think this one can work, lead sleepwalking. And then you can just play around with the volume of each layer here. So maybe if we turn this down, the new layer. So here's how it sounds with and without. So let's add something to the bass as well. So I found this bass right here. And as you can hear, it sounds way too low, like in pitch. It sounds like the bass is farting, basically. So if that happens, you can bring the bass up an octave. So Control Up key, and we get this. So now these layers work way better together. Now we can probably turn this one down a bit in volume. Let's add a sub bass to this as well that just sits even lower than our current basses. And for that, you can make a sine wave is what it's called. And then we can just bring this down maybe 2 octaves. Just copy and paste. And if you select the sub bass and then press Control down, it will move down in the channel rack. So let's compare with and without the layers. And with the layers. It just sounds a bit more full, right? Let's also add some kind of atmosphere sounds to this as well, which is gonna make it sound even more full. So if we take the piano chords here and copy them and then make a new pattern called pads, we can create a new instrument, go into Serum and paste this in here. So I found this pad. So a pad is typically something you add in the background that just fills the track up, and this other pad here. And together they sound like this. Let's add them to the mixer and add some sidechain to them. And if you want to place the pads between the other patterns, you can just right click here and click Insert One, which will give you an extra space in there. So let's give it a listen. And the pads are too loud, so let's turn it down in volume here. This works. Let's add some real vocals to this as well. So I found these 2 samples on Splice. One is a chorus and one is the verse. And as you can see on the samples, it says B flat minor. B minor means B flat minor. And basically B flat minor is A sharp minor. I'll add something on the screen that makes a bit more sense. Let's fit this to the right tempo by just clicking fit to tempo. Fit to tempo. Then we add the chorus here maybe. And then we can add the verse before this. So we can just press Ctrl Alt to select everything and move it forward. Just quickly add some reverb so we get some vibe going.
Just set me free from all that ache. Your bitter words is all I taste. Just set me free, don't break me more than you did before now.
Hey, it works. Let's add a little bit of a build up here. Maybe this one can work.
Just set me
Sort of a build-up. And the drop is too low in volume right now, so it doesn't really hit that hard. So there's two things that I think we can do. One is adding something like crashes to just give it some impact. Maybe an exhaust are very famously used for this as well. Something like this. Maybe some sweep ups here to just build tension. Cool. Maybe that's some kind of impact here like this.
Just set me free from all that ache. You better just set me free
something like this.
from all that ache. You better watch is all I did before now.
The drop just doesn't hit that well, right? It's because it's too low volume. So a way to fix this is go to the master channel in the mixer here, where I have all the instruments and sounds routed into this channel. So whatever effect we add here, it's gonna affect everything in the whole track. So what we can do is add a fruity balance that will only adjust the volume, and then right click and create automation clip. Which means we can then go in here, shift left click if you want to lock it so it isn't affected by you soloing other things. Left click, copy this. So now the drop is gonna hit harder.
Break me more than you did before now.
Hey, that sounds way better. Now let's take this, all of this, Control B to just duplicate it. And maybe add this vocal here at the end as well. And mute everything here in the end, the last part here.
Than you did before now.
And then we start the next verse here. Then we just copy and paste all of this again. And we basically have a complete track. Now we just need an intro, and we can easily do that by maybe copying pasting this and adding the vocal chop as sort of our intro, you know, intro hook. And then make this piano not hit as hard. So if we make this unique, this will make this pattern different than the other piano chords patterns. And then we bring down the velocity here so it's more soft. Now the verse is gonna sound way softer.
I'm holding on to you.
Maybe increase it a little bit.
I'm waiting on your move, so I can find out which true.
Cool. And the final thing to fix this intro is to maybe add a filter so we slowly introduce the song. And this effect is used in so many songs and you're gonna recognize it. So let's turn the resonance down here. Bring the cut up max, then create an automation clip again. Then pull this down a bit. Maybe a little bit more.
I'm holding on to you.
Typically when you're arranging a track, you want something new to occur like every 8 bars. So if you remember, this is 4 bars. And this is another 4 bars. So 8 bars here, we're introducing some bass and the lead. And then 8 bars later, we're hitting the drop here. And then maybe here in the second verse, we maybe want to add the kick here to just build on the track. So we can just copy the kick, paste it over like this.
I'm holding on to you.
Then we're sort of building the track. But yeah, I think that's pretty much the track. And this brings us to the next step, mixing. But first, I figured I'll teach you the most important features of the mixer so you understand how it works. So every mixer have this knob here, which adjusts the stereo wideness. So wider to the left, more center to the right. And the bigger button above here is the panning. It's how you move a sound from left to right. And if we go to the vocal chop, you'll see this little button down here. This turns on and off all the effects in the entire mixer channel. So it's a great way to hear before and after. And one thing that is crucial to know is that the order of these effects matters as well. So if I use a scroll wheel and move this pitch shifter down, it will now affect the reverb. Right? So you probably want the pitch shifter before the reverb. And the last thing is how you route these mixer channels. So if you look down here, you can see I'm sending this bass channel to the master track here. So if I want to, I could, let's say, take all these drums, let's rename them drums, and then take this new mixer channel called this drum bus. And the bus channel is just another word for group channel. So what we can do is take all these drums and not send it to the master here, and instead send them to the drum bus there. This means they will go to the bus channel and then into the master. Turn this on. We can now hear it. And now we can turn on and off the entire drums with one button. So that's basically how the entire mixer works. And now let's start mixing. And the goal of mixing is to make the track sound more polished and balanced by giving each instrument its own space. And you do that by adjusting the volume, adding effects such as EQ, compression, reverb, etc. So if you take a look at this image, it's a 3D visualization of an example of a track on what sounds could take up which space in the stereo and frequency spectrum. And mixing is a beast of its own. I can't possibly cover it all right now, but we can still do a quick mix so you get the gist of it. And first, we're just gonna adjust the volume. Let's maybe turn down the bass a little bit. Let's give the sub bass its own channel here. And if you hold Alt and press the left arrow, you can move it to the sides here. So now we can more easily just turn down the bass if we want, and increase the sub if that's what we want. Alright, cool. So now I've adjusted the volume a bit and gotten it a little bit more balanced. So let's now think about the frequency spectrum. And something producers often do is cut unnecessary low end of sounds. So if we take the sub bass and the bass, for example, and pull this up, you can see how the sub is really low, like 30 Hertz. So what we can do is cut these frequencies out of the bass so it doesn't unnecessarily interfere with it. Pull this down to maybe 70 Hertz. And then we have the lead here. So let's add an EQ to this as well. Just cut everything we don't need below here. You see there's noise here? Just cut that out. And we sound a little bit more clean. We can do the same with the piano. About 100 Hertz. Maybe cut some highs on this. And this piano is really wide as well, but I'm gonna push it a little bit more to the center. Maybe just 20%. And then we have these two perk hits as well, and we can just cut the low end from those as well. And I think this shaker loop can probably sit a little bit wider. So if we add also an imager, we can just increase the wideness like this. Just a little bit. Let's cut some lows here as well. And all these small adjustments is gonna add up and just make it way cleaner sounding. Let's take this pad. And this pad doesn't really need that much low end at all. So we can probably cut more than typical. Something like this. Before. After. This cleans it up so much. So I did some final volume adjustments and now I think it sounds great. So let's move on to the final stage called mastering. The goal of mastering is just to get this loud and just enhance it a little bit for release on Spotify and whatnot. So I like the plugin called Maximus. And in Maximus, I like to change the preset to Soundgodacer preset A. And then here you have the mix knob, which just adjusts how much you want it to affect the track. And then if you click bands here, you can see these low, mid, and high settings are all separated by the frequency spectrum. So if we pull this down to maybe 100 Hertz, and then this one I like to pull down to maybe 500 Hertz. I think the best part about this plugin is that you can adjust the stereo field based on the frequency ranges. So if we go into the low here is the stereo separation button. So if you move this all the way to the right, it will make it completely mono. And if you go into mid, it's kind of making it a little bit wider here. But I like to make it a little bit more closer to the center, like maybe somewhere here. And then on the high end, you can probably make this a little bit wider. So let's hear this before and after. So I increased the mix a little bit here. I think it sounds a lot better, and I don't think you should overthink mastering when you're just starting out. Just do something simple like this. So I think we can call this song finished. So to export this track, we can just select the whole track by right-clicking up here and make sure everything is in it. And then you can press Ctrl R to choose where you export it. And the only thing you have to pick here is whether or not you're going to use a WAV file or an MP3 file. So WAV file is called lossless audio format, and that basically means it's the max quality. And MP3s are way lower file size, but you lose a little bit of quality. You're probably not even going to notice it. So if you're going to release this track, then obviously pick WAV. Then click Start. And by the way, if you have any more questions about FL Studio, just drop a comment and I'll try my best to help you out. And if you like this course, then I think you're gonna love my 7-day music producer course, which you can find with the link in the description. That's it. Goodbye. Bye. Bye. Bye.